If you feel exhausted, overwhelmed, or stuck, if depression has been weighing on you, if addiction has been a part of your story, or if you're carrying the shame, loneliness, or a sense of hopelessness you don't know how to name, this space is for you. Recovery is not about perfection. It is about honesty. It's about connection. And most of all, it's about transformation. One conversation, one truth, one step at a time. I'm Randy, and we're here to talk openly about the struggles, the setbacks, and the moments that redefine us. Because healing begins when we stop suffering in silence. So take a breath. You're not alone. Let's have some transformation talks.
Hey everybody, welcome to Transformation Talks. My name is Randy and I'm your host. And this morning we have a special guest, Joshua Redkey. Josh, how are you?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Doing good, man. Doing good. It's kind of cold out there.
Yeah.
You know, getting sick and tired of this snow, ready for some warm weather.
Ain't that the truth? I'm ready for these kids to go back to school.
For sure, man. Hey, so glad you're here today. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So my name's Josh. I'm actually a full-time college student.
Okay.
I'm getting my degree in Homeland Security, and hopefully use that to go into hopefully one day running my own security company.
Nice.
Well, I'm from Texas. I'm from just north of Houston.
So that's where you're born and raised?
Yeah, I was born and raised Houston.
Okay.
I had both my parents. Just basic, all American childhood.
You got brothers and sisters?
I've got. I have two older sisters that were both military. I have one older brother and two younger brothers.
Oh, nice.
There's 36 years between my oldest sister and my youngest brother.
Nice, awesome.
So, I've got a host of nieces and nephews. And I've got 5 kids. Yeah, 5 kids of my own.
Wow.
I've got, 11 kids.
So you're currently married, I guess?
Yes. I met my wife about 6 years ago, almost 6 years ago.
Cool.
She sees this, she's gonna whoop me for that. But yeah, so I've got a 10-year-old, 5-year-old, and 4-year-old boys. My youngest daughter just turned 2 back in November, and my oldest, we adopted her. She'll be 23 in June.
Awesome, man.
But yeah, I spent most of my adult life in the military. I was stationed in Fort Campbell and Fort Riley, Kansas.
What was your job?
I was a indirect fire infantryman, so I shot mortars.
Okay, mortarman, yeah.
Oh yeah, I loved it. I loved every bit of it. One combat deployment, one training rotation to Europe. That was great. You ever been to Europe? It's a blast, and not just not just like the allure of being in a foreign country. Like there's so much history in Europe.
Yeah, I was in Germany myself.
I spent a little bit of time in Germany, but most of my time was spent I was a month and a half in Poland. Fun fact, the camp that we were on was a concentration camp during the war.
Nice.
And then Bulgaria and Romania. And just training with our NATO allies over there.
Cool.
Like where we were in Romania, you could stand on the beach at the Black Sea, look out, and you could see the lights in Ukraine. But yeah, most of my adult life was military. 3 weeks after I graduated high school, I was down at Fort Benning, and my butt belonged to Uncle Sam.
So you currently are a person in long-term recovery, correct?
Yes.
So my first question to you is when did it begin for you with addiction and kind of what was your thing that you struggled with? So
my poison was alcohol. I took, every kid does it. You take, a sip of dad's beer. because I didn't realize it till I was older, but my dad was an alcoholic. But I had my first full beer at, I think I was 15, 16. My my aunt gave it to me in my grandmother's garage. And my grandmother came out in the garage and I just turned green. I was like, "Oh crap, I'm in trouble." But I guess the addiction really started after I joined the army. Because the army takes your drinking to the pro circuit. You're
Oh
not
yeah.
you're not in the you're not in double A ball anymore. You're in the majors.
Yeah.
Well, it started out just drinking with the guys and wanting to fit in. So I'd get probably more drunk than I should have. But what really drove it, what really started the decline was after my first deployment. My first wife.
Where were you deployed at?
I was in Afghanistan. I was in Paktia province, Afghanistan, which
Okay.
is about, for those that know, it's about driving a Max Pro, an MRAP. It's about 8 hour. It's about an 8 hour drive to Bagram Air Force Base.
Okay.
I tried to talk to my first wife, and same thing with addiction. If you've never been deployed, as much as you can empathize with people, you have no idea what it was like. So I tried to talk to her. I feel like I know there's people that care about me. Like I know there's people that love me, but I feel alone. Well, she laughed at me. So at that point I was like, well, okay, I'm just not going to talk about it no more. And you can only bottle stuff up so much before it explodes. So I had one of those 44-ounce Yeti cups. And I'd make me coffee in the morning. I put a little bit of bourbon in there, go to work, come home at lunch, rinse it out, make me a Jack and Coke, and go back to work. I never got I never got in a whole lot of trouble with the law, but there were times where I was like, I wake up the next morning, man, I'm never drinking again. Friday comes around and right back at the bar.
I got a quick question now that you mentioned that, because I've had that same sentiment myself, as I'm never going to do this again. But what was it? What was the number one thing you think that kept you stuck in it?
The wanting to fit in. All my friends were drinking. I didn't have any sober friends. And peer pressure, man. The guy's like, "Oh, come on, just have a drink with us." And one turned into four turned into blacked out in the back of a taxi. And looking back now, all my friends knew that if they got me a drink and put that drink in front of me, I was not going to turn down a free drink. And they used that to their advantage. Because they knew I wasn't going to turn it down. So they used that to, keep feeding me drinks.
So now let's transition forward just a little bit. When's the first time that Josh is having an honest conversation with himself and is saying, "Hey, I need help," or "I want help"? What does that look like for you?
It started, I was able to stop for, I was able to stop on my own, but it would last maybe 4 or 5 months. And then it was, I'll just have one, I'll just have two. And then it was right back in there, just backsliding right back into drinking, a fifth and a half of Jim Beam and then going out to the bar. So I was able to, I can't count the number of times I stopped, but I wasn't able to stay stopped. I wasn't able to quit.
But where was that one moment in your life though, to where it's like, okay, enough's enough. I've got to go get help. Like,
When this last time, I've been sober. Today makes 9 months, 21 days.
congratulations.
And what really, it was honestly the look on my wife's face. I had gone back to, one drink won't hurt, and we had gone down there to Pigeon Forge, and they have they have all those distilleries down there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we went down there with some friends, and I got this. We got some bottles of hard cider. Delicious. It was delicious. Not gonna lie. But I was making drinks at 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. And my wife was like, Are you okay? I was like, yeah, it's just, it's hard cider. It's not like this is where she got me. She said, I told her, it's hard cider. There's not a whole lot of alcohol content. She looked me in my soul. It was like, that's an alcoholic's answer. You need help. And it really boiled down to, it's me or the drink. And I wasn't gonna lose her, because she's the best thing that's ever happened to me. I know, as cliche as that sounds, it's true. But we just so happened to, this was the Thursday or Friday before Easter last year. And we just happened to go out to my in-laws' house. My uncle was also in recovery. So I was talking to him about it. I don't know what made me open up to him and talk to him about it. He was like, hey, there's a meeting down here, right down the road from you in Kingsport. And they're meeting at 7 tonight. So I told my wife, I was like, I'm gonna go see what this meeting's all about.
So what does life look like for Josh today, now that Josh is 9 months sober compared to whenever you first began?
So I'll be honest with you. The first little bit was rough. I did 60 meetings in 60 days. My first 2 months of recovery. Well, we were going to church up in Pennington Gap. That's like an hour. That's an hour each way on a Sunday morning with 4 kids in the truck. But I was actually at a meeting, and my wife said, why don't we try to find a church closer to home? So she sent me the link to one, and I was, looking at their website, and I saw that they had a Celebrate Recovery. So I was like, why don't we go check this one out? We'll see what it's all about. We'll, check out the Celebrate Recovery on Wednesday, and we've been going ever since. And I actually did I did a podcast with a pastor down in Atlanta a few weeks ago. And I love the 12-step system. It's great for those that actually put in the work for it. The work to do it. But he said something that will probably stick with me till the day I die. He's, not knocking the 12-step program, but Jesus is the 1-step program. So actually what's keeping me sober is my faith. The 12-step program talks about, your higher power. That can really be anything. Mm-hmm. For mine, it's Jesus. And that's what's really keeping me on the right path. My wife and I started a ministry. We're plugged into all these other different ministries.
What's the name of your ministry?
It's the Blessed Cup.
Okay.
We meet and talk about Jesus over a cup of coffee.
Nice.
You know, even if you don't like coffee, you know, we got hot chocolate and tea and whatever.
So I gotta ask, because I know for myself, man, like it, especially growing up, like I went to church, but I would necessarily wasn't forced to go. But I kind of stayed in the church, so to speak. Early on, compared to like right now, like have you always been a man of that's had like a strong faith or a strong connection with God, or has it just gotten stronger over time? Or
So it's kind of gotten stronger over time. So, you know, I started going to church in 2007. But looking back, you know, I was just playing, you know, I was just playing church, you know. Like I was going cuz that's what I thought I was supposed to do. Like I was just there to fill a seat. But the last probably 8 months, it's actually been like I'm plugged in. Yeah, you know, my dad was an alcoholic, but he was not a church person. I think I've seen him go to church maybe 2 or 3 times my whole life. But I can vividly remember going to work with him in the summertime, and we would just sit for hours and just talk about Jesus. Because he worked with a reverend in downtown Houston. Now, he was a reverend on Sundays, but he was a warehouse worker during the week. But we would just sit and just talk about Jesus. But it wasn't until, you know, 7, 8 months ago where like my faith just, you know, took that upturn, and I was no longer just there to fill a pew. I was there, you know, to be a follower of Jesus.
so you're saying your faith is what helps keep you anchored with your sobriety.
Yeah, 100%.
So I guess another question I've got to ask is I know for me, just as an example, like man, and like when I encountered like trials or tribulations in my life, like the drink or the drug seemed to be the solution to help me deal with those trials or tribulations, whatever you want to call them, right? So like today, right, like I'm currently 3 years sober, right? And today, trials and tribulations that pop up, the way I handle them are definitely a lot different. You know what I mean? But I guess my question for you is like, what helps keep you besides your faith? Is there anything else that helps keep you grounded when you're dealing with the trials and tribulations that often come with life being just life?
My wife, honestly, my wife actually, this month she'll actually be 6 years sober. So if I'm having a bad day, you know, it wasn't always like this. You know, I did some things, not long after my recovery. My recovery started where I almost lost her. But lately, you know, if I'm having a bad day or she's having a bad day, or, you know, the kids are getting on our nerves, or something's just not right. You know, we can go to each other and we can talk it out. You know, she'll give me some words of wisdom. I'll give her some words of redneck wisdom. But yeah, like aside from my faith, my wife is who helps.
So having
me
the
grounded.
connection and connectivity.
Yeah, because she's also a veteran. So, you know, she's been through what I've been through. She was deployed to Iraq. You know, so we have that connection. You know, we've been through the same stuff. So being able to talk to her about, you know, what's going on in my head, and I can talk to her about what's going on in her head, it helps kind of keep us centered on that path.
Did you ever think that? Did you ever think that in the very beginning when you were caught in that addiction, in that storm, like you today? I mean, you'd be able to handle how life is today.
Absolutely not. Like if you'd have told me a year ago that I'd be where I'm at right now, I probably would have laughed at you and called you a liar. I never in a million years thought that, we'd be running a ministry. We'd be so plugged into our church. You know, I worked for Hawkins County Sheriff's Office in the jail for a while, so I got to see people coming in they were arrested high. So I saw the whole process of them coming down from that. But the only difference between me and them was they got caught and I didn't. So being able to see the turnaround. I saw a guy that he was in jail while I worked there. I saw him at a meeting a few months ago and I didn't even recognize him. Because he was he was heavy into his recovery. And, recovery changes the way you think, the way you look, the way you act. So being able to see him now versus 2-3 years ago and see how good he's doing is amazing. So, I was talking about ministries. So I work with another ministry that they have a recovery house right here in Kingsport. And being able, just in the 6 months that I've been working with these guys, just seeing the just leaps and bounds that they've made in their recovery is amazing. Like, it's so awesome to see other people's recovery journey.
So for someone who might be tuning into this, right, and maybe they're on that edge of wanting to give it up, but they're still at that struggle point, right? Like they want to quit the drinking, they want to quit whatever it is that their addiction are struggling with. What piece of advice or suggestion would you offer that person?
Talk to somebody. Even if they're just there to listen. They don't have to talk back. But find someone that has a listening ear and just talk to them. Because sometimes getting all of that off your chest can help you. I am all like, share your testimony. Tell your story. I tell my guys, your testimony is so powerful. Like your story is powerful. Just find someone to talk to. And even if you're right there on that edge, you could be right on the edge or 20-30 years clean. Sometimes it just takes one bad day for you to backslide all the way back to the bottom. So finding someone to talk to that you can confide in, sometimes that's all it needs. Sometimes all they need is a listening ear. No judgment, because it's my belief that, I'm not here to judge.
Hey man, so what's your plans for the future?
So actually, we are, my wife and I, I told you that, we've got the Blessed Cup ministry. Right now we're just meeting, in our home. But hopefully this time next year we'll be full-time ministry and we'll actually have, a storefront, for lack of better words, for people to come in and, especially on days like this where, it's real cold outside, because our whole plan is to bring scripture to those that need it. Because it's very comforting. Like, there's a lot of stuff in there that's very comforting. But we plan on being full-time ministry this time next year. That's really the big goal. We got a bunch of events coming up through the other ministry that we kind of work with. I don't know if you heard of Feed the Need.
Yeah.
That's coming up. There's actually a revival. We're setting up a revival coming in 3 weeks.
Nice. Awesome.
So we're real excited about that.
Cool, man. Well, listen, before we wrap up, you got a final message or anything?
I do. So my wife and I, we have the Bible app on our phones, and every day we get, a verse of the day. And especially with what we're doing here, what you're trying to do with this podcast, giving people hope that they can come out of their addiction. And what I was saying earlier about, sometimes a listening ear is all they really need. Proverbs 12:25, chapter 12, verse 25 says, worry weighs a person down, but an encouraging word cheers a person up. As hard as it is not to worry, it's in our DNA. We're going to worry about everything, or the bills paid or all this. But, sometimes all a person needs is like, hey, man, I'm glad you're here today. Glad to see you. Sometimes that's all a person needs to brighten their day. So if you're out there and you see someone that you think might be struggling, just talk to them. Give them an encouraging word. Tell them you're glad to see them. Tell them, I'm glad you're here today. Whatever. It costs $0 to just be nice to people, no matter what their past.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to Transformation Talks. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And again, every Friday, 6 p.m., please tune in.